Hi everyone, welcome to Value. So today we're going to look at a company called Blacksky Technology. They recently listed for a SPAC merger on New York Stock Exchange at a $1.5 billion valuation. And basically these guys are using satellites that are worth $10 million or less and able to do what Google used to do with $1 billion satellite. So it kind of tells you how far things have come in terms of satellites and technology. And they're able to use their small satellites to bring down the cost of satellite imagery and also the speed at which you get your imagery, which is really amazing, especially once you see this presentation and how everything works. You're gonna believe that this company is an amazing company and something you want to consider investing into. But you know, that's just my opinion, of course. I'll let you be the judge of how great this company is in your eyes. So they did a SPAC merger of a SPAC called Osprey Technology Acquisition Corp. This gave them cash of $445 million to enhance operations, and this is the breakup of a $1.5 billion valuation and how they got there. Alright, so to jump into those main points, 2021 revenue is set to double, well, nearly double last year's revenue, and 2022 is set to more than double this year's revenue. So that's really cool that they already know what their revenue is going to be like this year and next year, particularly since they signed very long-term contracts. They already have a good headway on how things are like going ahead. They recently just won a $30 million AI analytics contract for US government agency. So that just gives you an idea that these contracts are large. They are with government agencies and they are very long term as well. They also work with Palantir, and recently Palantir wanted to invest with them as well. So when Palantir, a massive company who's basically also extremely advanced in their technology and the way they do analytics, also wants to invest in the company, that gives you a really good idea of how amazing Blacksky is. They've got a pipeline that has grown to $2.5 billion, meaning there's just a lot of money out there for these guys to continue to gain, because there's a lot of demand for this service, and in time, that's why their revenue is just growing like clockwork. That's why they can double this year and they can double next year, because there's just such a big demand for this service. They're set to sign 25 new enterprise customers by their year end, and then they've got over 30 enterprise customers who are quite interested in what they're doing and also getting their services as well. They're looking at getting about 14 satellites by year end, and this is solely reliant on Rocket Lab, who is going to be sending their satellites into space. Rocket Lab did have a delay. Originally they were going to send some more satellites for Blacksky in August, but it's been delayed, but I assume it's going to be happening very soon. And yeah, that's a cool thing if you follow Rocket Lab as well, since Blacksky is one of their customers. Alright, so why would government agencies be interested in what Blacksky does? So this is one of the examples. They did a 30-day persistent monitoring of the fall of Afghanistan, and basically if you can capture 30 days worth of images, it kind of tells you how stuff has changed on the ground there, and it can give you a lot of information, particularly government agencies, and they can use that information to plan or advise on certain issues. And yeah, as you can see here, different images are going to tell you different things. This one's probably more useful in terms of explaining how the usefulness is more transparent. So this is a port in Australia, and you can see these colors that are identified by colors, and you see this occupancy coloring. So red means there was no occupancy, and green means there was a lot of occupancy at 100% occupancy. And it can actually tell you, you know, especially the management team who may not actually be at this port all the time. If you're a worker, you're there all the time, but if you're a management team, you're not there all the time. And to receive data like this that can tell you how often your port is being used and what areas, it can give you a lot of it gives you a good strong ability to plan ahead. Also, they've been using this data to actually help hedge funds as well. So if hedge funds are investing in commodities and this port happens to be transporting commodities, they can actually get this data and be able to use this to predict what the amount of commodities being supplied through this port is, and they can actually use this information to translate into the demand and the supply of certain resources, which basically can give them a leg up in terms of investing in futures and determining the prices of certain resources. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of stuff that you can use this company for. So an image, as they say, can tell 1,000 words. All right. So this is a nice way to sum it up. They are a first mover advantage in what they're doing in terms of real-time satellite imagery. A lot of cases, as you'll see in the future and later slides, a lot of people ask for the service and then they usually get what they want a couple of days later, which is quite a delay, whereas these guys can get it to you within 90 minutes or something like that. They have a $40 billion addressable market, which is extremely amazing. Continues to expand. They have a wide moat. If you follow Warren Buffett and you hear a lot about moats, it's extremely cool to just have a company admit they have a strong moat. 2.5 billion pipeline, as we've talked about, and 80% gross margins. So the margins are extremely good. So like all software as a service, the margins are extremely good. That the more business they do, the more it's going to translate to profits later on in the future. And this is their model. Monitor the world in real time, detect and analyze global activity, and understand and predict changes. Put all those together and it's extremely useful to a lot of companies and government agencies. So this is what they see as the current model. You have consultant experts, data providers, software providers, and geospatial analysts, and they're all different companies or people, and the end user has to talk to them all before they get basically a full overview of something. With Blacksky, they've managed to put the solution all in one package, which means there's less time having to liaise with everyone, and there's less cost as well, and you're able to just get it straight to the end user in a very good, effective way. And this is what is basically making Blacksky such an awesome company. So I think this slide probably gives the most information for any investor. You just probably have to show this person this slide, and if they're not convinced, then there's nothing else you can really do. Alright, so current legacy way of doing Earth data is 120k spent for over a month. That's how much it would cost for a month of images every day. It would take 2 to 3 days on every request before you get your image. So that's extremely long time if you kind of need it. And they even walk through the steps of what you're going to do. You're going to call your customer service, wait for a collection, get a quote, order image, and then wait a few days before you get it. And then you have to generate a report, and it's going to be very time consuming. With Blacksky, it's as simple as log into the platform, select your data feed, and then receive the alert of when you get it, and then you'll have your insight in less than 2 hours, and that's going to cost you 12k a month. So they can do it at basically at 10% the cost of what current providers are doing. When you find a company like that, that's extremely good. So basically, yeah, you've just got a company that can do things cheaper and quicker, and you go to any other industry, and if you can find a company that's doing that, you probably want to invest in that company. Yeah, so you can also see like this is the interface that you get to use, and it's quite a nice simple interface, beautifully designed. So yeah, I think from my point of view, I'm thoroughly convinced. So they've done extra case studies as well, why US and international defense and intelligence agencies want to use them, and it's also a very large growing addressable market that in the next 4 years basically, since this is from 2020. It's basically just going to double the addressable market. Same with the construction industry. If you've got a large project and you're an international company, say like Tesla, right? Say like Tesla has, they're based in the US, but they're building a factory in, say like Germany. They can actually get satellite imagery of the factory being built in Germany, and it's going to tell them the day-to-day progress of what's being built. So you imagine that's going to be very useful to a company like Tesla. And if this only costs you $12,000 a month, then a company like Tesla that's in the hundreds of billions, it's not going to be a very high cost, and they're going to find this tool extremely useful for their projects, especially what they do. So that's just some idea. Same with insurance as well. Insurance, if a natural disaster happens, or you see, certain buildings being affected by certain events, you can also use that imagery to track that, and that's extremely useful as well on insurance aspect. Alright, so in terms of how they see the next couple of years going, last year the customers were about 14 customers. They expect about 50 this year that they'll end up. Looks like about half government and half commercial. And in next year, the significant amount of these customers are going to be commercial, and still a good chunk is going to be government as well. As they say, robust pipeline growth. So you can see that the growth in pipeline has gone up significantly. From January, from the start of last year, it was at about 600 million. It's basically tripled by the end of last year to 1.7 billion. And by the middle of this year, it was at 2.5 billion. So you can see that pipeline for growth is just immense. The revenue that they predict last year was 21 million, this year is 40 million, and next year it's looking about 114 million. And this is kind of really a nice breakdown as well. So as you can see, existing customers tend to just buy more services as they stay. So customer A from this year, that they expect to buy 5 times more basically services and products from them next year. And then customer B is going to stay the same. Customer C is going to get 6 times more services, and then other customers are going to use 2 times more. This year's new customers are going to use 5 times more of their service next year. So you can see just that 114 million, they're able to estimate that revenue is because basically they're all existing customers. They've already signed these contracts, so they already know what's next. So basically you know what the revenue is going to be like next year, which is the amazing thing basically, that you have a company that you can already predict the growth of, and the growth is just fantastic. As you can see here, after next year, they expect to go to 226 million in 2023, 389 million in 2024, and $500 million in 2025. So you can see those revenues are going to just, in the next few years, grow like clockwork. And this is why you might want to consider investing in the company, because it's at a 1.5 billion valuation. This company is extremely predictable revenues going forward. And basically we have the extremely strong growth. So you can see that it's just going to compound the value going forward in a very strong way. Alright, so now we're going to go through the margins. They have extremely nice margins as well. So you can see the gross profit, it's going to go up by quite a large amount every year, and it's going to translate very nicely to the bottom line as well. So in a few years, we could probably see this company going up many times the valuation currently. So if you have the patience, definitely worth considering about this company. So this is more or less just repeating of what we've seen so far in the presentation slide. So they have 11 satellites in production. They expect 14 by year end in space. They have 175 employees. They started in 2014, at least that's the year of incorporation. So yeah, like this is basically the competitors. They're competing against a company with space data, geospatial software and analytics, and consulting experts. So right now that's all fragmented, that's all supplied by different companies, and you probably might recognize some of these names. Whereas these guys, they offer that one solution all put together, rather than someone else having to go through all these 3 channels just to get what they need, which is extremely time consuming and costly, as we've seen on the prior slides. Alright, so estimated target market is growing from 13 billion from last year to 40 billion. So you can see that by investing in this company, you're moving with a rising tide, and when you move a rising tide, it lifts all boats. So in a way, they don't have to be extremely great at what they do. They just have to be pretty confident, but I think these guys are pretty great at what they do. As they say here, they tick every box of what is expected. And yeah, basically they have a view that, hey, customers actually just want the advice rather than the data, because they're not going to take that much use out of the data. So here that they see the value of Earth data is actually very small, and then if you translate to the information part, it increases. But if you can provide insight with these images and this data, that's where the real money is. And they want to provide this whole comprehensive solution so that they get the largest piece of the pie, which is a very smart way of doing things by this company. So basically this is the main selling points: increase speed to insights, reduce high startup data, software and staffing costs, lower total cost of ownership, integrate directly into customers' workflow, and easy to use. So when you hear about those things, they're very compelling selling propositions. So yeah, this is just more or less of what have gone through, and it's been said and done. Yeah, so we can look a bit more into, say, operating profits. These guys probably don't expect to be break even or cash flow positive until 2024, but that's alright. They just recently got 445 million to fuel their cash burn, and it seems that cash will be enough for them to get until break even, which is also always very assuring. And in here they've just provided more case studies for oil and gas companies, particularly if you've got like an oil rig in the middle of the sea. It's extremely helpful to have satellite imagery, particularly if you're not at that rig all the time. And yeah, and same, you can look at environmental effects of certain areas as well, particularly useful for basically mining companies or any company in general. So yeah, you can see how extremely cool the company is, what usefulness it has going forward. And yeah, when you can see such a company with such practicality, they've already built some revenues, they're getting a lot of customers coming in, it's just a matter of buy and hold in my view anyway. But let me know what your thoughts are. If you've got any questions, post below. Until then, good luck investing everyone.